Hey folks, tonight we're diving into a town so polluted it makes Chernobyl look like a wellness retreat. I'm talking about Picher, Oklahoma, America's most toxic ghost town. Forget haunted houses, this place is haunted by heavy metals. We're talking lead levels so high, they make Flint, Michigan look like a bottled water commercial. But hey, at least the parking's plentiful, right? Because who needs breathable air when you've got ample street parking? Picher wasn't always a toxic wasteland. It was once a thriving community, full of life and promise. Once upon a time, it was a bustling mining town, sitting on top of a massive lead and zinc deposit. The streets were filled with the sounds of industry and the laughter of families. Think of it as the Wild West, but instead of gold, they struck poison. The miners worked tirelessly day and night, driven by the promise of wealth and prosperity. For decades, miners dug deep, extracting riches and unknowingly unleashing a silent killer. The lead and zinc they pulled from the earth were valuable, but they came with a hidden cost. See, mining creates a lot of waste, mountains of it actually. This waste, known as tailings, was full of toxic heavy metals. And in Picher, they just piled it up, creating giant, unstable hills of toxic debris. These piles grew larger and larger, towering over the town like ominous sentinels. These weren't your average dirt piles, folks. They were a ticking time bomb, filled with dangerous substances like lead, cadmium, and arsenic. These were mountains of heavy metal doom, just waiting to leach into the water supply and poison the very air. The toxic dust from these piles would blow through the town, settling on homes, schools, and playgrounds, creating an invisible hazard for the residents. The people of Picher, unaware of the danger, continued with their daily lives. Children played in the shadow of these toxic hills, and families built their homes on contaminated land. It wasn't until years later that the true extent of the contamination became clear. Health problems began to emerge, and the once thriving town started to decline. Today, Picher stands as a ghost town, a haunting reminder of the cost of unchecked industrial progress. The toxic legacy of its mining past continues to affect the land and the people who once called it home. So what exactly makes Picher so toxic? Well, imagine a witch's brew of heavy metals, all competing for most likely to give you cancer. We're talking lead, zinc, cadmium, arsenic, the gang's all here. These toxins seeped into the soil, the water, even the air. Remember those giant piles of mining waste? Turns out they weren't exactly structurally sound. They spontaneously combusted, spewing toxic dust into the air. Imagine stepping outside and taking a deep breath of lead-infused air. That was Picher's reality. Section 4. The Exodus, leaving behind more than just homes. By the early 2000s, the government finally realized, hey, maybe living in a toxic wasteland isn't the best idea. The environmental damage had reached a point where it was no longer safe for human habitation. The air, water, and soil were all contaminated, posing severe health risks to the residents. They offered buyouts to residents, urging them to abandon their homes and start over. The buyout program was a desperate attempt to mitigate the damage and provide some form of compensation to the affected families. Many residents were reluctant at first, but the deteriorating conditions left them with little choice. Imagine being told your town is so polluted the government will pay you to leave. The news was met with a mix of disbelief, anger, and sadness. Community meetings were filled with emotional discussions as families grappled with the reality of leaving behind their lives and memories. It was a heartbreaking exodus, families forced to leave behind their homes, their history, their poisoned memories. Moving trucks lined the streets as families packed up their belongings, saying tearful goodbyes to neighbors and friends. Old family photos and cherished mementos were left behind, too painful to take along. Today, Picher stands as a ghost town, a stark reminder of the human cost of environmental negligence. The once thriving community is now a desolate landscape of abandoned buildings and overgrown vegetation. It serves as a haunting testament to the consequences of ignoring environmental warnings and the devastating impact on human lives. Section 5. Picher's Legacy, a Cautionary Tale, with a side of lead. So, what can we learn from Picher, other than, don't build a town on a toxic waste dump? Well, there's quite a bit more to it. Picher's story is a stark reminder of the long-term consequences of prioritizing industrial growth over environmental and public health. Picher's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked industrialization, and the devastating consequences of environmental neglect. The town, once a bustling mining hub, now stands as a ghostly reminder of what happens when profit is placed above people and the planet. It's a reminder that sometimes progress comes at a steep price, and that price is often paid by the most vulnerable among us. The residents of Picher, especially the children, suffered from severe health issues due to lead and other toxic substances. Their plight underscores the importance of stringent environmental regulations and corporate accountability. And hey, if you ever find yourself craving a lead smoothie or a cadmium cocktail, just remember Picher got there first. But in all seriousness, let Picher's legacy serve as a powerful lesson. We must learn from the past to protect our future, ensuring that no other community has to endure such a tragic fate.